And we're back. Yet here we are again, another episode of the Lipstick League. Welcome, everybody. I'm Natalie Eganoff.
I'm Nicole Mahalik. It's where sports and pop culture come to play. We have another guest today.
Are we going to celebrate every guest this way?
Yes.
We should.
Absolutely. It's a big deal because we're very picky about our guests, and the guests we choose, they embody what the Lipstick League is.
Yes.
So Alex, thank you so much for coming on to our podcast.
I'm so happy to be here.
And the cool thing about Alex is that, and we were talking off mic a little bit, we're going to get into your whole story first, and then we'll get into the sports, but Alex is from South Jersey, basically Philly, right over the bridge.
Right.
And then she was a radio girl, but now she works in the record industry, but she's also like a crazy sports fanatic.
Oh, okay.
But you also have this like incredible journey of like being this like conservative Christian. And now you're this like badass modern woman liberal who has like the most amazing responses to tweets and like there's so much to talk about with her.
It's so like fun.
It's gonna be great.
Nicole's known me for a long time, which means Nicole has seen the tweets that I've now since deleted, and Nicole has seen my questionable views, which I am open about because I believe that you should be vulnerable and transparent because it gives people hope that I am a case study that you can change. You can be a very conservative evangelical and then practically become a leftist in the matter of 5 years. So there's hope is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but you just always know the perfect thing to say to these crazy people that reach out to you. And I'm like, God, her responses are so cerebral and witty. Like, and Natalie's like that too on Twitter. And I'm like, God, I'm always like, you know what? Shut up, your mom. Like, I'm so bad at comebacks. Like, it's just not one of my things.
Literally, somebody just tweeted me and was like, "You're not funny." And then he like tagged his friend, and I responded, and I was like, "Did I at you?" I said, "Or are you responding to me and adding one of your little friends?" Yeah. You know, like I'm just like, I wasn't talking like you follow me. I wasn't talking to you. You know. You're just so rude.
So, all right. So Alex, let's go. We were talking a little bit off mic too about just like your journey just in the last 10 years, but like go back even further, like growing up are you Haddon Heights or you Haddon Field?
Audubon.
So, Audubon. Got it.
Which is like, you know, the not as nice as Haddon Heights and Haddon Field, but right there.
Yeah.
But
wait, let me interrupt you really quick because I just want to say for those listening, Alex is representing LA. So she lives in LA. Yeah. You've lived in LA for what, 6 years at this point?
7 years.
Holy
7 years.
shit. Right.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes. And like, so not only is she like a sports fan, but she knows her shit. And then you also now kind of adopted the Chargers kind of like as your team. And so we're going to get into all that. But then she also flew home for the Eagles Super Bowl. So like, I'm telling you, like when I say that she's like a lipstick leaguer, like she's
to the T.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's so interesting. And so like I admittedly, and I got my start, and we can go back to this, but I did get my start in sports radio. And like when I was in college. Yeah. And so when I was in college, that's when I met Nicole. Like I was an intern at Q102 and Power 99. But like when I went back to Kentucky, which is where I went to college, not UK, but everyone thought I went to UK because I hung out there so much. And I worked at the flagship station for UK sports. And so little background about me, what I think I wore as a badge of honor is I knew like a few people that went into the NBA and NFL, and they were like, no, Alex knows her shit. And I was like, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
What I will say is when the pandemic hit, I felt like this last year, I have been really bad at staying on top of sports, but I don't know if you guys have come in contact with this a lot. A lot of people that like, especially when I went back home to Philly, over like the break, a lot of people were saying the same thing. So I don't know if it's just like COVID brain or just like everyone's been preoccupied with the pandemic. And it's just been weird to watch games where no one's in the stadium, but they're still like filtering fan sounds like through the stadium. It's been this like weird thing. But, you know, all that to say, like, you know, there is a pretty strong Eagles following in Los Angeles. And there's actually an Eagles bar that's down the street from my house.
Oh,
and
wonderful.
yeah, it's pretty incredible. And like, I mean, like before the pandemic, it was packed. Like every Sunday there was a line out the door of transplants from Philly, you know, wanting to be with their people to watch the birds play on a Sunday. And it was just the coolest thing. Cause you like, it's weird when you live in like when you live in LA or just you move in general, like when you meet someone from Philly or Jersey, there is like this instant kinship of like, okay, I know you're good people. Like, you know, it's just, you almost speak a different language. And it just was so comforting to like be a part of that. Getting a little sidetracked. Nicole, I think you asked me a little bit about my story, but yeah, I'm from South Jersey. You know, I grew up there before I went to school in Kentucky. My dad, you know, was a huge influence on the fact that I'm as big of an Eagles fan as I am. I'll never forget being like 8 or 9. And my dad would watch, obviously, like every, you know, South Philly Italian man would watch, you know, the birds play every Sunday. Yeah. And I remember they were playing the Cowboys. And I went, oh, I like their star. It's really pretty. And my dad, like, he was like, no, he muted the TV and like grabbed my shoulders and he said, we are Eagles fans in this house and you will never say that again. And I was like, okay. But like, I just like from that time, like, you know, especially getting into high school, it was funny. Like my brother and I are 8 years apart. So like when I was in high school, I was, you know, so into just going and watching going to games and watching games with my dad. My first game ever that I went to, and I love telling this story, I was 12 years old and it was the last Monday Night Football game against the Giants at the Vet. And I was 12. And my mom, I know, my mom who's like the least sports person ever. Like if you look at Nancy Gervasi, she doesn't like, we're very different. My mom's like, I don't get it. Like she's like, would be vacuuming in front of the TV and me and my dad would be like, move, like, ah! But like she decided, you know, she got tickets through a client. And so her and my aunt decided, oh, we'll take Alex to the game. She's like such a big fan. I had my Hugh Douglas jersey on. And, we went there and my mom pulled me at halftime because like, you know, the Vet was like the Wild West. It's like people who think the link is rough. I'm like, you have no, can I curse on this? Podcast? Yeah. You have no fucking clue. And like, I just will never forget, like I'll never forget. It was like the weirdest, it was like a fever dream. Like we were next to a Catholic priest. And then on the other side of me, there was like women taking their tops off. And then my mom was like, it's time to go. Like you got school in the morning. And I was so pissed. And then we were walking out and I was throwing a fit. I was like, are you kidding me, Mom? Oh, like we're winning. Like I want to stay. My mom's like, this is too reckless for you. You're 12. And like I was like standing on the seats screaming at the top of my lungs, like with every other full-grown Eagles fan who's like drunk in their 40s, like, and I'm just like rowdy. And then I'll never forget, there's a man on like one of the upper decks of the Vet, and he's peeing over the railing, and it hits my mom in the shoe, and she's like, we're done. We're
God.
He's like, I've had enough.
Yeah.
But you know what? That was my first Eagles experience.
That
ever.
sounds
for
like
some reason it sealed the deal for me, and I was
like,
that's
it sounds
I'm in
like it sounds like an episode of It's Always Sunny in Philly.
It really does. And that's the thing. Like people try to ask me, like, you know, just it's so great. And you know, what's awesome is my best friend out here, one of my best friends, Laura, we met about 2 years ago, and her husband's from Avalon, New Jersey, and he's been out, you know, so he's been out in LA for over 20 years. And one of the first things we bonded over, I met them at the same time watching an Eagles game at a bar. Yeah. And we met through a mutual friend, but I was like, oh man, you know what I miss? Like they don't have in LA. Like no one has a basement in LA. It's like a weird thing that you don't think about until one day you go, oh my God, no one has a basement. Like it's weird.
So where do you keep all your Christmas decorations?
Yeah, exactly. Like in the garage, if you have one, but if not, a storage unit. But it was like, I just was like, I miss basement bars. And he looked at me and his eyes were huge. He goes, I'm building one right now. We have one. And I was like, are you kidding me? And so now we call it T3, where I watch my Eagles games now, or it is at T3. And they have a back house, and that's a big thing in LA that they rent out, but the bottom floor is the bar. And so I've now been contributing, and I have like a Flyers mug in there that, a Flyers Stein. And then there's like, we have a Jerry Blavitt poster from Memories Margate.
The Geeter with the heater.
The Geeter with the big boss with the hot sauce.
Yes.
Like he signed it. I was just like, every time I walk through, I'm like, yeah, I'm home, but I'm 3,000 miles away. But it's stuff like that where it's so funny because like people, like I try to explain to people in LA, I'm like, you see this? Like this is normal, like back home.
Yeah.
Like, everyone in Delco has a basement bar.
Yeah, literally.
And it's so funny how like we're so provincial that it's almost like, you move out there and you're like, I'm gonna start anew, but here's my Jerry Blavitt poster because I have to I have to hold on.
Yeah, people, it's now funny because we've gotten a few LA people on the Geeter with the heater train. So I mean, that's a whole other podcast we could do, but
it is. And my two really good friends of mine. So my friends, Mark and Chrissy, who I actually met when I started on the promotion crew years ago, weirdly enough, his last name it's Mark Sirianni. So I'm like, are you related to the new Eagles coach, Nick Sirianni? He's like, long lost cousin. I was like, let's get those season tickets. But his grandmother is still alive. She's in her 90s and she's a Jerry Blavitt groupie. Like her and her girlfriend still go to see him. Yeah, same.
So I met Jerry Blavitt for the first time last year. Actually, like February of last year, I met him for the first time. And I have the funniest story about him. I don't know if we have time to tell it, but my mother used to be a hostess at the Mashalou, back in the day. My mom was like a hostess there. And she said she used to, people would like slip her like a 50 and they'd be like, can you get us a good table? And she'd be like, absolutely. So she started to, develop relationships with people who would come in like judges. And back then, like, the 90s with like Joey Merlino and like all those guys. And like Jerry Blavitt would come in and like all his people. So they invited my mom to like one of his shows. She brings my aunt or whatever. And they're at Finnegan's Wake. And Jerry Blavitt. Yeah, which is no longer, I don't know if you know that, Alex, but Finnegan's is no more, sadly.
I've heard of it, yeah.
Yeah, so they're at Finnegan's, and I guess he like you'd see my mother in the crowd, and my mom was probably like, I don't know, 34 at the time. And I think he was like, oh, like, who is this woman? And, he was just like singing a song to her or whatever.
Of course.
Yeah, and apparently, like serenading her. And apparently my mom or my aunt was like, if they were ever to get married, she would be Gabby Blavitt. And she said like the whole place just started cracking up. And she was like, Jerry looked like a little like mortified because everybody was like laughing that my mom would be like Gabby Blavitt. So when I met him last year, I was like, oh my God, first of all, you're Jerry Blavitt. Like I've known you since I was like a year old. And then I'm like, and second of all, like I tried to tell him the story about my mom, but like, I don't think he was like connecting it. And I was like, okay, I've sufficiently embarrassed myself enough in front of Jerry Blavitt. Like I'm going to go back over to the other side of the bar, but like, it's funny. Okay. And like you tried to hit on my mom like 20 years ago.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And he's still like, listen, I go to Memories still every summer. Like I live in LA. I'm like, no, I go down the shore every summer. Like I have to get it in. And I mean, I went in the pandemic, everyone was still on the dance floor with their masks on. I was like, you are not holding these people back. Like, they will show up for the Geeter with the heater.
Yes.
Oh, I love it.
So so you went to a Christian high school, right?
I went to Nicole, not just a Christian high school. I went to Christian school from kindergarten through my senior year of college. I was in Christian schooling.
So, but this is when you decided to go to Kentucky, did you want to go to be close to the University of Kentucky with the sports, or did you go because it was just the Christian school? Like, what made you pick Kentucky? I don't know if I've ever asked you that.
No, yeah. So I went to a small school called Asbury, and I was actually set to go to a school in New York City called King's. And, because it was the media capital of the world, I had known I wanted to do radio because of my aunt, Amy Jo, who, Nicole, who worked at CUNA too. She would like haul my butt around.
Who Amy Jo is
4.
Amy Jo's Benjamin Buttons, like she just keeps looking younger.
It's like annoying. I'm like, you're 45 and you still look like you're 27. Can you please not?
It's amazing.
Like truly, like but anyways, so she would like take me around to all the Q102 promo things, and I would go to the Q concerts. And so literally people ask me like, what did you want to do when you were in kindergarten? I was like, I wanted to be on the radio. Like it never changed. I always wanted to. So I thought, I'll go to New York, the media capital of the world. That will be great. And then I went to I was at a college fair in high school, and for just Christian universities. And there was a school, Asbury, and they were like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to be in radio or TV. And they're like, well, we'd be a really great school for that. I was like, where are you? Kentucky? Okay, bye. And they're like, no, actually. And then they showed me where all of the people that have graduated from their media program have landed. And they, at the time, not making this up, only school in the US that was allowed to send American students as interns for the Olympic broadcasting services. And so that was because one of my professors sat on the board of the Olympics.
Okay.
And I guess the Olympics didn't really trust Americans at that time. It opened up to everybody else, but they were just like, all right, well, like, we'll trust these students. So when they said that, I was like, my ears perked up, and I was like, okay, like, I've never been to Kentucky. I think you're crazy, but I'll go. But they really did. Like, they had a fantastic media program, and I had known what I wanted to do. I always kind of have like been like just forward, like thinking in the future has been a strength of mine, and at least having some sort of a blueprint. Obviously that changes, but I was like, well, this is what I want to do. So what would be the best thing for me to do? I was like, I'll give it a year. If I hate it, I'll transfer. And I ended up graduating, and I actually interned the 2012 Olympics in London. Yeah. And it was really such an interesting experience. And I always like, I'm very grateful for my professors. I don't really at all align with my, alma mater's belief system or, anything. But the one thing that, it did help, it did set me up for success. I got my first job at Iheartradio because one of my professors was an Iheartradio personality in Lexington, Kentucky. And like, I didn't have a car. I was 20 and the station was 40 minutes away. And I just would borrow my friends' cars to go until my parents like gifted me this beat up Hyundai Sonata that was like a lawnmower and it got me from point A to point B, but that's all I cared about. Yeah. And so that was it. Like, I started as a board op. And like, I still keep in contact with some of my professors who will reach out to me in the radio program or the media program and say, hey, I'm trying to update my curriculum, or, I'd like your insight on this. And so, I will say, like, because of that, going there, it did lay the groundwork for me to get my start into radio. So that was really cool. Like, before I even interned, I had a part-time job as a board operator for a conservative news talk station, which is crazy. And then also the sports talk station.
Oh, okay.
And so that was it. And then, then later that summer I interned at Q102 and I met Nicole, and, I was again, 20, maybe 20. Mm-hmm. No, I think I was 20 at the time. I wasn't even 21. And I just remember like meeting Nicole for the first time and her talking about just like digital strategy and like social strategy. And I learned so much from Nicole, just like, interning under her and like, and just taking like the wisdom that she shared and then just fucking ran with it. Like the moment, like I was out the door, like, I went back and I applied the things like Nicole had taught me to the stations in Kentucky. And then, I did stuff for B104 in Allentown, and I think the Fox it's called there. I can't remember. But yeah, so that's kind of how I got my start in radio. And I just kind of worked my way up from there.
But weren't you on the air in Kentucky though at some point, right?
I was, yeah. After I board opped for a few years. And then once I had actually at B104, I would submit my tracks through Kentucky for the overnight slot. And I got like a little bit of, I just got a little bit of experience. They let me do the weekend slot for Lexington, the Cat. And, I did that leading into my senior year of college and then throughout my senior year. And it was kind of crazy because I started getting like calls like before I graduated from just like bigger markets, like at CBS, and my program director at the time, you know, had notified the guy who ran Top 40 Radio at iHeart, who eventually had become my boss in LA. And, you know, iHeart was just like, okay, like we want to, you know, invest in this young talent. And, you know, from doing on air at Kentucky, the moment I graduated, I moved to Virginia Beach, and I was there doing radio for 11 months and then was miserable. I almost left the industry. And then,
you had a horrible experience in Norfolk.
Horrible. Like, I hated it. Like,
I mean, I feel like that's an interesting space, like place to kind of be.
Yeah, it's hard because it's like, it's called the 7 cities. So, and like all of them are so secluded, like they don't really talk to each other. And so
Norfolk's very military too, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a very big military town.
Right.
And I just, you know, my OM at the time was awful, and I didn't like him, and we didn't get along. And then, you know, iHeart then moved me to Austin, Texas, which was awesome. I thought I'd do like, you know, 2 or 3 years there. And I was only there for literally 5 months before LA called. And then I moved to LA. And I've been in LA for the last 7 years. And so I was at Kiss FM in Los Angeles for 6 years before getting let go from iHeart.
But it was such, I mean, it was almost like, and it's not going to be a bash iHeart show, but
I mean, we can be if you want. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
No. And it's just that like, they moved you so like that all happened so fast for you, and you were
within 2 years. Yeah.
And you were so young. And I just felt like they never provided you with like the right, I don't know, just like, and you were lucky. Guidance. That's the word. Guidance. Yeah. They kind of just like, to go from Kentucky to Norfolk to Austin to Kiss in LA.
That's insane.
And to be what? You're 23? 24?
I moved there. I was a month away from turning 24 when I moved to LA. So I was a baby.
Yeah,
and I'm about to turn 31 on Monday. So it was, I mean, shit, I can't.
Happy early birthday. Actually, happy birthday. By the time this airs, happy birthday.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you were such an Aquarius too, because it's like you're just like, I love it. Like, I love when I meet people. I'm like, yes, you're totally,
you know, it's, yeah, I've gotten super into astrology, sidebar, but I never had really related with Aquarius. And then like everyone's like, you're a total Aquarius, stop. And I was just like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm an Aquarius rising.
Oh, okay.
Which I find really interesting because I feel like it makes like total sense for me. Like my son,
my whole,
and then my rising is Aquarius.
Yeah, no, my rising's a Gemini, which means I can't shut the fuck up ever. And then love people. And then my Aries moon is strong when the Jersey temper wants to come out occasionally.
Right.
Yes, it's very Aries. It's actually it's so funny because there's a full moon in Leo tonight, and some people were so I'm a Leo, and then my rising is a Pisces, which is weird because the Pisces are like so sensitive, but like they're also very nostalgic, which is I am. But then but my moon is, or maybe my moon's Pisces. I don't know. One's Pisces, one's Virgo. And I was like, but I do have a little bit of OCD, and Virgos are OCD-ish.
Yeah. So, it's, you know what? Can I just say, I have gotten very good. God, I'm so LA right now. I have gotten really good at guessing people's rising, moon, and sun. Like I did it with my trainer the other day. It was funny. She's a Sagittarius, and she's like, I don't feel like a Sagittarius. I was like, why? She's like, well, I'm such a homebody. I go, clock this, because we're going to now look it up. I was like, I think you're a Capricorn rising. I was like, I said, no. I said, I think you're a Taurus or Capricorn rising, but you're definitely an earth sign moon. I want to say one of those two things are interchanging. So the Cap will be in the moon, or the Taurus will be in the rising, or vice versa. And I was right. She was a Taurus rising and a Cap moon. And I've done that a few times.
Yeah.
Scorpio moons are the easiest for me to see. Normally they have a very dark aesthetic, especially on Instagram, but like I'm like really proud of myself.
That's
I'm like,
good.
I'm getting good at this shit.
That's
Yeah.
excellent. I'm super into astrology too. I'm pretty sure my moon, I think I have a Taurus moon, which would
Okay.
explain where kind of like my like, because I have some of it in me
They're
because
more
the rest,
stubborn.
yeah, the rest, I can be super stubborn. My mom's like, Natalie, like you will argue your point until like the cows come home. But like, yeah, but like it's weird because I was like Libra, Aquarius, and then Taurus. I was like, I feel like the first two because they're both, you know, like air signs.
Air signs.
Yeah, I'm like so airy, which makes sense because my head's like normally on Mars. And yeah, and then Jupiter or not Jupiter. Wow. Taurus. I'm sorry.
Taurus.
It's fine.
Let's
No,
I don't even know what I'm saying.
You know what's interesting? So actually to bring this back to like what we were saying and kind of bridge the gap between astrology and me losing my job. There was a few things, but so there's a thing when you have placements in Capricorn, there's a thing called Cap Karma. And for being an air sign, I have 2 stelliums in Capricorn, which means you have 3 places of the placements of the same sign. Mm-hmm. And so I have 6 placements in Capricorn, and Capricorn rules my work life. And my astrologer is SZA, and Kaylani's astrologer. Her name's Jade on Twitter. Jade Astro, and she's incredible. And when I lost my job, she messaged me and said, "Tell me what happens to your boss when you find out, your former boss who let you go." She goes, "There's no way that she's like, he's going to lose his job. Like something's going to happen." I was like, she was like, "You have such strong Capricorn placements." So I'm like, we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully it's not anything eerie, but I was just like, that is so like bad. But I was like, that was the first thing she messaged me. She was just like, but it was, she had messaged me the other day because I now have moved into this brand new position. And that was like the same thing. She was just like, looking where you were a year ago and what you're doing now, like makes a lot of sense too, when you look at your birth chart. But yeah, look at your chart. If you got some Cap placements, like if it rules your love life, if it rules your family life, your work life, or your friends, if someone has wronged you, start to trace back and see if there's ever been karma that has, taught them a lesson to not treat people badly.
Wow. That's so interesting. I'm gonna look that in. Yeah.
I'm gonna like do that after we're done here.
I know. So, Astro Cafe is the best. Sorry, continue.
No, Astro Cafe. Do you ever see Astrology Zone's pretty good too? That's in depth.
I haven't done that one.
Susan Miller?
Susan Miller. Watch her. It's the paragraphs are like, yeah. It's intense.
I don't know this. I feel like
Astrology Cafe has it shows you the houses that it rules. It's all free. Houses, placements, everything, and it's like it gets creepy. Like literally, it gets so detailed to the point where you're like, "Well, that was weird." Weird thing to be detailed about, weird. Be correct about.
Cafe Astrology.
Yes, Cafe Astrology. That's it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's how I found
the best.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm gonna check it out too.
Now that we've got that.
So obviously you were doing. Did you start as middays or did you started as overnights in LA? Right.
No. I started at overnights, and then 6 months in, I went to late night. So I started at 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. And 6 months in, I was promoted to 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. And then I did that for about 2 years. I was so depressed just because I was sleeping 3 hours a night because I'd have to go in during the day, and I was working 6 days a week. Like I didn't have a social life. It was rough. Like it was really bad on my mental health. And then, throw in a toxic workplace and voila. Like, so I hit this point where I don't know if you know this, Nicole, you probably do, but like, cause I think I saw you, but I almost
almost left. Yeah.
Yeah. I almost took a job at Q102 and it was all teed up. My boss in LA was helping me even do that. So he was aware of it because I was miserable. And as much as I wanted to stay in LA, I was like, it's not worth my mental health. And so I was going to take a job at Q102. And then at the last minute, my boss in LA changed his mind and offered me middays and music coordinator in LA and weekends off if I decide to stay, which also, what a mind fuck. Like he went from not wanting me around to wanting to give me a promotion. And that's like how this guy worked. Like it was literally his emotions and his moods would change overnight, like based on how he was feeling. And that's just how he would treat everybody. Oh, it was, imagine having it for 6 years. Like it was just like things like that. And so I did that. I signed a 4-year contract, and then 2 years in, actually a year ago, I was going to buy a house in LA, which is a big deal when you're 29.
Yeah.
And, you know, someone looked out for me and knew what was happening and said, you need to tell Alex now. The thing is, they thought I was just getting demoted to overnights again, had no idea I was going to get let go because these iHeart layoffs were happening. And, you know, I could go on and on about it, you know, what my personal feelings on what happened, but I'll never forget what really struck me, and the thing I like to focus on about the 6 months I was unemployed and also when I got let go, was the kindness that I received from people. And I think what was so incredible was, you know, at that point, you know, I had lived in LA for 6 years, and so many people in the industry was like, oh, like, you know, well, yeah, when you don't have your job at Kiss FM, like see who answers your calls. And that was always in the back of my mind. Like, do people only like want to be around me because I'm on Kiss? And and I said, and I stand by this, I didn't have to pick up my phone when I was unemployed because my phone wouldn't stop ringing. And I'll never forget walking into someone's office at Disney for a potential job. And they said to me, you know, I was shocked when you got let go. And I sat on it for a bit because I was just so deeply confused by it. And he said, but then every single label walked into my office and said, call Alex Gervasi. And I sat on his office and I cried because of course I did. Like, I was like, sorry, this is unprofessional, but I'm just like blown away. And that for me was when I was like, if there was ever a doubt that LA is home, there's no more doubt. Like the people, like it has every city has a stereotype, and I've lived in enough cities in this country to tell you there's fake people everywhere. Right. And like LA has this stereotype for being fake. I have, of course, come across it, you know, because I've come across it in every fucking city I've lived in. They're in Austin, Texas, they're in Virginia, they're in Philly, they're in New York, they're everywhere. But I have thankfully made the most genuine, kind friends, and there's some real ass people here, and they really looked out for me, and like honestly was part of the reason I got this job. Like my boss was like, I've never had more people send me a resume when you applied for this job. And so I'm like, yeah, like cool. Like we can look at, you know, what quote unquote I did to get here. And I will always put that back to, no, that just came down to people being kind and good. Like there's 1,000 people that could probably do my job. And there were people who were willing to stick their neck out for me, which is why I will always stick my neck out for someone else, because it really can make a difference. And like, thank God, God, there were people that ran to my house. I'll never forget losing my job of 10 years and moving around the country and sacrificing relationships, family time, you know, spending time with my grandmother who's dying of Alzheimer's. Like I sacrificed so much for my career in radio. And the moment that was ripped from me before I was ready to, it was devastating. Like I felt my world had fallen apart. And I'll never forget going home and just like, it felt like someone had served me divorce papers, and my house was like a rotating, like revolving door. Like people didn't even text me and say I'm coming over. They just showed up. They just knocked at the door with food, with wine. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. What do you need? Do you need someone to help you with your resume? Do you need this? And it didn't stop until I got my next job. And it is something I will never forget. And it's something I really think a lot of now, especially in the midst of like this terrible pandemic and so much uncertainty, and no one's promised anything. But I always talk about peaks and valleys, and like you know, when you're at your peak and you're like, okay, whether it's a good day, a good week, a good season, you're killing it at everything, you have this appreciation to be able to want to sit in it because you know it's not forever, and have this gratitude. And then it's the same thing with the valleys that come too. And when you are in the unemployment, like Nicole, I'm sure you can speak to this, like when you're in the unemployment and when you are experiencing grief or sadness or depression or whatever it is, also having the perspective to sit in those valleys and say, well, I know this isn't forever either. And this sucks, but I can sit here and I'll lean on my people and I can find those great things that happen as, you know, around me as well. And
it's just interesting you're bringing this up, because I felt the same way. Like I actually I get more emotional like thinking about how kind people were to me when I lost my job. Like it was just amazing. It was just the kindness that it was the same exact experience that I had. And I just like will never, ever, ever forget that. And I just think, you know, it's just so important. And, you know, to talk a little bit about, you know, we're talking about your experience and like you mentioned, a boss, but a lot of the problem is that, and a lot we talk about in this podcast is just old white men who still run everything and make all the decisions we'll talk, you know, sports radio, country, but like top 40 radio, the target demo is women 18 to 34. And the people who make the decisions are like 68 years old, literally 60-year-old old white guys. And I mean, I remember being in meetings and like the PowerPoint would come up and everybody's picture would be up there. And I remember being like, no one sees this problem. Right. And like, they wonder, and I worry about it every day. Like, obviously if we're still in radio, I worry about the industry, which is going to lead me into what you're doing now. But like when they're not forward thinking, I say this all the time, The View has been on the air for over 20 years with 4 or 5 main women. Hoda and Savannah lead the biggest, you know, morning news show. There's no morning show in radio with 2 women. It wouldn't even cross somebody's mind to do that.
And you know what's interesting? Now that you're saying that, there's a woman who's she's in the industry and I've talked to her about it, and she's a manager in the industry, and her and I have spoke briefly, you know, just about like the barriers to stuff. And she said to me, she said, you know, she's like, I'm an executive and I'm in these meetings with all these men. She's like, and they're sitting there telling me, well, we have to reach women. And she's saying, she's like, I raise my hand and I say, well, this is what we should probably do. And they go, no, that's not going to work. And she's like, meanwhile, I'm the only woman in the room and you're talking about reaching women.
You're mansplaining women to me. Like it is the most stereotypical fucking man shit.
Yeah. And she's like, she said it's beyond frustrating. She's like, I've learned how to navigate it. She's like, and I understand like the importance of being the only woman in the room. She's like, but it never gets easier. You know, she said, especially when it comes to decision making and giving input. And she said, I would sit there and just be floored by how they're talking about me. She's like, I'm a mother. I'm 40 something years old. I'm the person they're talking about. I'm telling them what should be done as a manager, as an executive. And the men are saying, no. It's just, hopefully I'm very optimistic just because of, you know, the way that things have played out, especially over the last year and all the movements that are being made. And like, I really feel like there's a move towards zero tolerance, but it's so tough. And what's even sadder is everybody has these stories, right? We've all been.
I mean,
like victimized. We've been victimized by it. Like you saying you were at the mercy of your boss's mood. Imagine if that was a woman. Imagine if it was a woman. She would have been crazy, hysterical. Oh my God. Too emotional.
Like, I'm like, I literally, when people say women are too emotional, I say, have you worked with men? Like, have you ever worked with a man or just spoken to one?
Yeah. Nicole knows from my stories, just that I tell her, because I'm the only woman at 97.5 The Fanatic, and I love all my coworkers, but good God, they're the drama.
She tells me stories. I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah. The drama just never ends. And, you know, I don't know if it's like an emotional intelligence thing or if it's just
it's everything, girl.
it's
Like,
yeah,
you know,
it's too much
it's
stuff.
I saw this thing. What I would have to double check this, so please correct me if I'm wrong. But I was reading this this thing about how it's ironic that like when women get their periods, it's our testosterone rises and then we become more emotional. And I'm like, oh, isn't that fucking ironic? Like it's just some shit like that where you're like, oh, so we start acting more like men who are little bitches.
Yeah.
And that's a not politically correct thing to say, but I'm gonna say it. So I was just like,
No.
but that's the thing. Like it is.
Write that down somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I just, the stories that I have and it I will like, man, it gave me clarity in the sense of when I exited iHeart, when I was let go, I had an idea of what I wanted to do. It was less of here's a specific job. It was more of, and I still have the note in my phone. What do I want to feel? Like, I don't know what my next job title is. I have no clue. What do I want to feel? And the things I wrote down was, I want to feel respected. I want to be in a place that's innovative and forward thinking and encouraging. I want to work with people who are empathetic and emotionally intelligent and kind. I want to experience this thing I haven't experienced really before. And I want to work, I know I want to work with music. I'm passionate about music. I'd be fine if I don't host anything anymore. But these are these points that I wanted. And a lot of them came down to, again, more of like emotional intelligence and more of being surrounded by a good work environment and less about the job I was specifically doing, because that makes or breaks it. You can do your dream job as I was doing. And also, to be fair, I am still very, very close with a lot of people at my old job because thank God, the reason I was there for so long was because there are incredible people that are in that industry, right? Like I'm not saying not that, but like, I just was like, okay, but I can see how one person or a couple people or a whole company culture can ruin something that you were once in love with. And I never want to feel that again. And so what I did was when I was interviewing for the department I'm in now and the original position that I had, I asked around and I said, tell me about this person. Tell me about this person. Tell me about their character. What's their character? And when people came back and said, oh, that person, best, one of the best men in the industry, one of the most stand-up individuals in the industry, and he's a white man. He is one of the, that's a good one right there. And oh, that woman right there, powerhouse, awesome. That's someone you want to work with. And guess what? They weren't wrong. They weren't wrong.
So I want you to talk a little bit about, you were doing middays at Kiss in LA and you left radio.
Yeah.
You could have moved, you could have stayed in LA, you could have decided, oh, I'm going to go to Chicago, I'm going to work for CBS, I'm going to work for Entercom. What made you want to move to you work for a record label now, and you could explain a little bit what you do, and we're going to get to the sports, everybody listening, don't worry.
We'll get to the sports.
But what made you say like, I'm going to take this leap?
So I knew if I ever got let go and the moment I was done from Kiss, I was going to be done with radio.
Okay.
I knew that for a while.
Okay.
I was thinking I had a couple more years to figure it out, but I had already been telling people like, I'm done. Like this for me, it was just like, I was just like, I'm not encouraged. I don't feel challenged. And if I'm feeling this in Los Angeles, then I'm not going to feel it anywhere else.
Right. Where do you go? Where do you go from?
Right.
Yeah. Where do you go from Los Angeles? Like it was just, the number one billing station in the world. And I don't feel inspired. Like why would I go anywhere else? So I had made this conscious decision that I didn't know what was next, but again, like what I wanted to feel. And I started to figure out what were the things that frustrated me. And the biggest one was I didn't feel like I had a voice and I didn't feel like there was anything innovative going on. And that was my biggest frustration. And so I didn't want to be a label rep because I just didn't really want to work with radio in any capacity. And I knew for a while I wanted to work on the streaming side of things. And I wanted to work with DSPs, digital streaming platforms. And so, which are, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, all that. So I was just like, well, that's where I would like to go. And that was actually one of the reasons, truthfully, that I wanted to become a music coordinator and a music programmer, like, years ago, because I wanted my career trajectory to start. I wanted to start laying the foundational work for me to be able to jump to another industry if need be.
Yeah. And for those of you listening who don't know radio, a music coordinator, program director, that means that you actually choose and schedule the flow of the music.
Yeah.
So a lot of people think you call in and say, hey, could you play Morgan Wallen? Actually, it's been scheduled for 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, actually, I scheduled that the night before at 11 p.m. when I was watching New Girl on Netflix. Like, it's just stuff like that. And so I really liked that. And so, so then it was interesting. Like, what happened was I had taken a few different meetings with a few different companies, and then the pandemic hit, and it was just like, oh, cool. Like, now I've been unemployed for 3 months. Now I'm going to be unemployed for a long ass time. And it was just like, it was like all the conversations I was having just came to a screeching halt. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm so fucked. Right. And at that point, it was probably a month in to the pandemic. And I had Curator, which I knew I wanted to, I wanted to maybe like program playlists for like Spotify or something like that and be a curator, because that's essentially what I did in radio. Yeah. And I had Curator pinged on my LinkedIn, and then I got a job posting that went to my email, and it was like hidden. And then I opened it and it said Universal Music Group, looking for a pop curator. And I literally reached out to every UMG contact I had. I said, what the fuck is this position? How is there a curator on a label side? Like, I've never heard of that before. Right. And they were like, we have no fucking clue what this even is. Right. And as it turns out, and it's like, UMG hasn't cleared this podcast, but like, I just like, as it turned out, like it was for a department that had never existed before. Called Music Strategy and Tactics, and it was brand new. Literally had just been created like 2 months before under Mike Begane, Mike Begane, if you don't know who he is, Google him. He created New Music Friday and today's top hits for Spotify. He was like at the beginning of Spotify. Wow. He changed the industry. Like, and so, it was his team, and, alongside of Sam Juneman, who was his VP. And, I had my first interview. I will never forget. And this is like any little bit of wisdom I can sprinkle that people had given me. Thank God. I didn't think I was qualified for the job. I almost didn't apply because there was a bunch of words on the application that made literally no sense to me. Like, I was like, I don't know what a KPI is, and I'm like, that was like just stuff like that, where I was texting my friends, like, what does this mean? I don't know what this means. And so long story long, after 2 interviews, they came back to me and they said, we know you wanted this job, but you're actually overqualified for it. And so there's a lesson there. Yeah. I almost didn't apply because I thought I was underqualified, and they're like, you're overqualified. And so we're actually going to give you a bigger position. And then 6 months later, and then 6 months later, this I can tell because it was pretty emotional for me. Back in, I guess it would have been like December or maybe November. I got a call from my boss, and they were just like, we want to create a new position for you. We want to, it's brand new. It's a global position, which is pretty cool. You'll be able to say you created a global position for the #1 music company in the world. And we want to make you the director of global curation strategy. And I literally looked at the date and I said, I was let go 11 months to the day. And
I just got the chills.
I know, my boss, I cried on the phone, and my boss goes, let's sit in this for a little bit, because that's pretty fucking cool. And you should be so proud of yourself. And so again, like, I think what's been really cool, like, I don't want to get into too many details about my job, because a lot of these things are going to be announced, the cool shit that we're doing. And that's cool. The thing is, like, literally my job is I get to create cool shit and like make waves in the music industry. And it's like the dopest shit ever. Like, I just like every day I'm like super stressed, but like also just like, what? Like, this is amazing. And like, what's cool is I have never been on a more positive, encouraging, emotionally intelligent, empathetic team of people all around. Like not a single person is left out of this in my life. And it comes down from the top down. And that's been pretty rad. And so, you know, I have to say it's been the imposter syndrome has been big and it always has been. It's been fierce, especially when you're trying to do something for the first time that no one has done before. So you can't really ask anybody to like, hey, how'd you do this thing? Because you're doing it for the first time ever.
Yeah.
But like it's been pretty it's been a journey, but man, like what a difference a year can make. And
so something that has been released is the Taylor Swift chapters, which she did for Folklore, where basically each, what is it, 3 or 4 songs from the album are listed as a chapter, which comes with a certain feeling. Is that how you would?
Like again, like trying to figure out how I can say this because UMG hasn't approved this, but it's like pretty much what I can say is those chapters, and Taylor actually just released another chapter last night for Evermore. But basically what we've been doing and what we created was a lot of these things where it's just like a new way to take music and have more fun with it, like continue the storytelling. And so
like experiential, would you say?
I think
make it a little bit more experiential.
Yeah, like you know, like Taylor Swift chapters, like I got to work on that project, like with the Folklore chapters, and that was like really, really cool. And that's all I can say about that.
But yeah, I think for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, it's a I think and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, it's a deeper way to understand what the album means. That's
exactly what that is? Thank you,
You're
Nicole.
Welcome. Yeah.
But also like on top of that, and that's like one of the cool, I mean, that's truly one of the spokes of the really cool things that we're doing. And then I also curate playlists. Like, you know, one of the ones I'm proud of is our Lost and Found playlist on Spotify. And we actually have just like branched out and made some subgenres for it. And these are the songs that are like these underground viral hidden trends that aren't like on radio or, you know, the big editorial Spotify playlist yet, because they haven't really hit that point, but they're bubbling below the surface. And then the songs like the Fleetwood Mac Dreams, that's a great example, right? Like where you're just like, oh my gosh, I forgot about the song. And it's like big on TikTok. It's like, you know, we have a ton of different playlists that we curate, but that's the one that I have so much fun with. And so it's been so rewarding. Like it's just a rewarding job.
But you've always been into like new music. Cause I mean, I've known you for a long time, and I always remember being like, I've always been like a hit person. Like I listen to songs like when I play them on the radio, but I always remember following you being like, God, she always knows, like, you know, you would always be like, here are the songs I'm into. And they're songs that like weren't even released yet or just coming out. So I feel like this job is just such a perfect, you know, scene for you. Do you know what I mean? Like it just,
and yet I'm just like listening to Steely Dan, which is like why actually it's funny. I didn't even get the pop curator position. I got the catalog position, and to use radio or just music terms, catalog songs are songs that are older than 3 years. And I was like, well, this is perfect because all I listen to now are the Eagles, the Doobie Brothers, and Steely Dan. Like, bring it on! Like, we're here. Like, I was hitting that age where I was like, what? What is this new track? Who is this? I hate it. Like
TikTok. What?
What's a TikTok?
But wait, speaking of TikTok, and I want to talk about this because you've been because you had a recent TikTok that went super viral, has like over 1 million views.
It has like 1.5 million views, which I'm like, that was a mistake. So,
but it was about mental health, and you've become a really big proponent and advocate about mental health. You speak very freely about it, and we talked a little bit in the beginning about the fact that you used to be a conservative Christian, and in the last couple of years, you've just become, and you have a very large following. So you have and you've gained that from the radio, but you've continued to grow it on social media. And so explain a little bit of that. Cause like, I was kind of teasing both of you, but like, you always have the best responses for stuff, but you really do. I learned so much from following you, like holistic psychologist. I started following because you posted about it all the time. And I just think that that's so, you really do help and educate a lot of people. So like, where did that whole side come from?
You know, it's interesting. I think like truthfully, my views expanded when my worldview expanded by moving to different places and talking to different people. I think it's so easy to stay in your bubble, and this goes for both sides of the aisle, though, you know, I'm not going to say, oh, they're the same. They're not. But like, I think we so often just stay in our bubble that like we forget there are people that have different experiences. And I think like, you know, I was just in this evangelical Christian bubble for so long in South Jersey, and then, you know, moved to Kentucky. And, you know, but as I moved across the country, I started getting more liberal, which is interesting. How that happens, how when you meet more people, your views tend to go much more left. But and so when I had always been someone growing up that was like in and out of therapy, and like when I went to college, I saw a counselor. I'd always been a big advocate for therapy. And then when I came out here again and I had like my first huge bout of anxiety about a year in, started going again. And I started going again because of a lot of what that TikTok talked about, where I was seeing these unhealthy dating patterns in my life. And I was just like, okay, girl, well, the only constant in this scenario is you. So like, let's get to the root of it. Like, and, you know, let's not repeat these mistakes. And so I started going, you know, to a therapist that I still see, Christy. We love Christy. And yeah, I think for me, it was like, especially to manage stress of my job, to manage, like to navigate how I worked, just to get to know myself on a deeper level and figure out how I ticked, became very important to me. And I think especially, and what I'm actually most proud of, you know, I have a larger following on Instagram, and that comes with a lot of shit, right? Like that comes with a lot of things that also is detrimental to my mental health, which is like trolls and everything. It's not fun. But what is most rewarding, and why I remind myself use your platform for good, which, you know, got me in a lot of trouble when I was in radio. Like it really did. Like the fact that I was so outspoken about Black Lives Matter, before everybody wanted to, you know, every major corporation wanted to gaslight their employees to be like, oh no, we've always been inclusive. Like, fuck off. Like, you know, it's like one of those, exactly. Like, oh, okay. Like, but 6 years ago, you know, you were for the past 6 years, you were telling me stop saying Black Lives Matter. And all of a sudden I'm no longer, you know, with said company, and I'm getting a text, hey, can you help us craft a statement for this? Like, fuck off. Like, it's shit like that. But I'm like, that's like the thing where I literally just was like, okay, I want to use my platform to talk about things that matter. I don't want to use my platform to just self-promote all the time, because how fucking boring and self-serving is that? Like, if I have if I have 250,000 followers and I'm not using it to talk about the shit that matters, then I don't deserve to have 250,000 followers, in my opinion. Like, so for me, it was like talking about social justice issues. It was and not to be like a social justice warrior. Like I do more beyond that, but like, let's amplify voices that do not have 250,000 followers. Like, let's amplify mental health issues. Let's amplify these things. And with that, I will say what is rewarding, the reason why I do it is, you know, I think as much as I love to shit on men, and I can all day, you know, men, because we live in this patriarchal society, it doesn't benefit them either. Like they are also victims of the patriarchy, and they don't feel like they can go to therapy because it's not manly enough.
That's what I was gonna say. They're just they're so messed up in the head because the way the society is constructed
because of other men.
Because of other men. They just again constantly shit on each other.
And like, so the amount of messages that I have gotten from men that have said, hey, thank you for posting what you post, because I just scheduled my first therapy appointment. I'm like, this is why I do this. This is it. And quite frankly, to your point too, Nicole, one of the reasons why my views had changed so drastically was because of people on the internet. And I'm so sick of people for years were like, stop putting things on Facebook, stop putting things on Twitter. You're just shouting into a void. No, I'm not, because I'm a living proof of that, because my views changed because people I respected and trusted, people I loved were sharing their personal experiences that looked vastly different from mine.
Yeah.
And so use your platform.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Now, I mean, I've always been very liberal. In fact, like I normally
You'd always
when, like,
fight about it.
yeah. Normally when like my phone would when my phone shows me like 11 years ago on Facebook, I cringe. But like I saw a post that I did in like 2009 that I was like, God, I've always been quite the social media warrior, but I've educated myself so much from social media and learned so much from social media that other people have posted, especially a lot of Black people that I follow and Black friends that I follow, or Hispanic or Muslim that I continue to follow. So I could continue to educate myself. And then I share that. And I've had people tell me that too. You know, I've lost friendships over it. And I'm like, but those people suck. And I don't want to be friends with people who cannot understand that other people are going through hell. And so I've learned so much. Like, not only have I learned a lot from social media, but I've also really learned how other people really think. And so, so it's like, I've been able to be educated, but then I've also been able to see people and be like, you fucking suck. And, you know, you've been hiding your racism, you know, behind, like this whole time. And now all of a sudden I see you. And I'm like, and I've said that too. I was like, I'm glad for social media that I could see how people really think and feel, because then I get to choose not to fuck with you anymore.
Yeah, it's, you know, and I feel there's been, as terrible and as hard as the last year has been, that has been, I think, one of the biggest benefits of everything that's happened is really just exposing the problems that we have as a society when it comes to racism and the patriarchy and all that other stuff, but also who harbors that stuff. And then, like you're saying, you're just like, okay, I know that they're not my people. Like if that's what you want to think and that's what you want to do, go stay over there and you're in the small little bubble and world that you live in, because there's just no like place for it anymore.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think, like, you know, I always say, like, one of the things that was like more humbling, you know, was realizing the reason why I wanted to hold like very tightly to a lot of my views was really my pride. And so I say, like, obviously, like, use discernment, be wise, but like the moment I feel myself getting defensive is usually my cue to shut the fuck up. Like, if someone who is Black or, you know, whatever is being like, hey, like, you know, when you say that, it's kind of hurtful or insensitive. What do I have to lose to not say that thing? Nothing. Like, if I have literally nothing to lose just by not saying that thing, then the only reason why I want to say that thing is because I'm being a dick and I'm being prideful and it's my ego. Like, for, you know, it costs nothing. It costs nothing to be kinder, a little bit more sensitive. And if your thing is, for what reason? What do you gain? You don't, if you don't gain anything, then why are you doing it? Like, you're doing it at that point just because you won't want to look like a dick. And quite frankly, you just look like more of a dick by doing it. Like, so I digress.
All right. So let's part of it really fast. What were we going to say, Natalie?
Oh, no, that's what I was going to say. Speaking of social justice, it kind of ties into, like you were saying earlier, you know, when we were talking that the perspective on sports has changed. I found a lot of it has had to do with a lot of the social justice movements within sports. Being a diehard Philadelphia fan and then moving to LA and being in all these cities, what do you think the difference is between the fan bases? If it just a quick summary, how do you, I mean, we all know what the differences are, but if you had to just kind of summarize quickly, a Philadelphia sports fan, we all know what they're, you know, what they are, and an LA sports fan. What do you think?
I have lots of opinions on this. I'll say off the bat, the LA sports fan I have the most respect for are Dodgers fans, man. Dodgers fans are the fucking realist. Like, they have, you know, gone through, I was so happy when the Dodgers won the championship this year, where I was just like the World Series, and I was just like, good for them. Like, Dodgers fans have been through shit. Like, you know, it was just thrilled. And I think, I've bubbled it down to a few things. And this is going to sound like a weird thing to say, but in a city like LA, where you can literally ski in the morning and then surf at night, there's so much to do. Like, you don't really live and die by sports anymore, because on a Sunday it's like 75 and sunny and no one wants to be in their house. And so,
and the games are on at like 10 o'clock in the morning too, right?
Yeah, they're on 10 o'clock in the morning or 1. And trust me, I love the fact that, the Sunday night football game comes on at 5 and I'm like in bed by 8. It's
so
perfect.
Sweet. Yeah.
But yeah, and so that's why there's just there's a lot of options on things to do. And so I think that Dodgers fans are the realist. I think personally, even though I adopted the Chargers, it was more of, okay, they're an AFC team. I had uncles in San Diego. I bought season tickets a year going into a pandemic. Great business decision on my part. Love to see it. But I want to say Rams fans are also like the rowdiest. Like, they're pretty real too. But yeah, I think like I think it comes down to like, you have a blue collar city and then you have a white collar city. And there's like, I remember my first Lakers game being like so shocked at the amount of men that showed up to the game in suits. Like, they just came from work and they just, booked it over there. And it was a much different crowd from even Clippers fans. Like, I like Clippers fans more because, again, they're a little bit bandwagony, but like, Sixers are too, if you think about it. Like, we just started getting like super good, and you're seeing the bandwagon fans. Mm-hmm. My first Clippers fan game, when they were trash, it was like, oh, these are my people. Like, they're not here in suits. They're here in like all of their jerseys. And if you think about it too, it's crazy. You have 2 teams per sport in this city. Yes. You got the Kings and the Ducks, and if you're an Anaheim fan, you live in Orange County, so there's that contention. You have the Angels and the Dodgers, same thing. The Angels are Anaheim, so that's Orange County, so that's like more, like that's not LA. Like, you don't think LA if you think the Angels. You think of like all the suburbs, beach cities, right? Yeah, it's like Orange suburbs, County, so like but like also some like you have Torrance and stuff like that too. But and then you have, what am I missing? Okay, so Lakers Chargers, same thing. Yeah. Lakers, Clippers, that's a little bit more mixed. Like, that's not really by region. But Chargers and Rams, same thing. Like, Chargers is more Orange County. I will never forget, guys, I shit you not. I went to a Chargers game and I was like, this shit. Like, I'm here for it, but you never see this shit in Philly. They it was through KISS, my old job, and they had us up in a like a tent with a waiter to have brunch and mimosas while watching the Chargers game. And they knew who their audience was. They're like, we're getting these rich white OC moms to come out to a game. And and so it's different. But you go to a Rams game, and that's a different vibe. Like, they still have the VIP tents like that we would go to, and it's still like a whole club and party there. But you also have 2 soccer teams. Like, we have we just launched the Los Angeles Football Club. Same thing. There's a fucking club on the upper deck with a pool, and you're just like, with a view of LA. It's a different experience when you go to games in LA, but it's its own set of fun. Like, it's not like if you want gritty and you want real fans, you go to a game in Philly. If you want like a more corporate experience, go to a game anywhere in LA. Yeah.
So really quick, how do they treat the athletes? Like, are they hard on the athletes? Do they love the athletes? Do they like, obviously, Philly, like I always use just even like somebody like Nelson Aguilar, who was like the 3rd string wide receiver. They ran him out of town because they're like, you suck. How do they treat the players there compared to Philly, Boston, New York, something like that? Do they care about the players?
Yeah, I mean, no one treats a player like Philly. No one treats their team like Philly. I mean, we're the city of brotherly love for a reason. Like, we'll love the shit out of you even when you leave. We'll respect you. Like, Doug Peterson.
But we also
forever.
hate you. Yeah.
Yeah. Because we're pissed. We're like, you don't take it seriously. This is like what we live and die by. But I think like it's definitely, when the passing of Kobe, like that for me was like when I really saw the effect of what an athlete can have on the city. I had never experienced anything like it, guys. I've never experienced anything like it. And we just came up on a year of that. And I just remember when I tell you, it was the quietest I had ever experienced the city. Like it was,
Where were you? Where were you when that happened?
I literally went on a hike. Another LA thing to say. I went on a hike and I got in my car and I was about to get in my car and I opened up my Twitter app and I was like, no, there's no way. And it was such a foggy morning. I mean, so overcast. And I texted the group chat and I said, Kobe died. And everyone's like, you're fucking with me. There's no way. And I'll never forget that. I will never forget I hadn't experienced in such a long time a group of people, an entire city grieving something at once, and like from getting into an Uber and just silence and then just being like, how are you doing, you okay? And like men tearing up and then going to that memorial and like that picture of him and Gigi wearing the Eagles hat too, like that was hitting close to home, and that being everywhere. And it was just like this really, that was when I was like, man, sports, you can shit on LA all day, but man, it matters to them. Like it matters. They care. Like it might not look the same as Philly, but especially for someone like Kobe and their team, it's like they go hard. And especially like Lakers fans. And like when you get into like, just like like I said, Dodgers fans in general, like it's not the moment they lose. It's not like this. It's not this.
Is it like, it's not like a visceral reaction.
No.
Right.
Like it's more of the, well, we love you so much. Thank you. Like if you're a dick, they'll like be like, fuck off. But like, it's more of a thank you for like all the years that you contributed to this team. And like, it's different from Philly in that sense. But I will say like LA, the real ones, the real fans, they love their teams so much. And so it's cool.
Who do you think's the biggest sports star in LA right now besides LeBron? Because he's like a next level, but like, who do you think that they just like can't get enough of, like talked about the most? Like obviously there's drama right now with Jared Goff. Like, do people want him to stay with the Rams? Do they want him to go? Do they not care?
I don't think like it's football. I would say it'd be like anyone on the Dodgers, like the entire team. Like, it's just that especially after coming off like a World Series, like they love that team. I would say Clayton Kershaw, like all day.
Yeah.
Like, they love, like, it's just, Justin Turner, like everybody. Like I think Dodgers again, if they're gonna idolize anybody, it's gonna be anyone off that team.
Yeah.
And it's cool. I mean, I really wish, like I'd say if this was normal times, I'd be like, come out, like you go to a Dodgers game, you get a michelada, you get a Dodger dog. It is such a fun experience. And then like, it's even like what I love is just like how why did I just blank on his name? The famous Dodgers broadcaster, Vin Scully. Like you have roads named after Vin Scully. I drive down, I'm about to leave and go to my friend's house and go down Vin Scully Boulevard. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like Dodgers feel so much more like Philadelphia because it's so, it's like, one of the former managers just passed away. And it was just like, it was, on the billboards.
Oh yeah, Tommy Lasorda. Yeah,
he was like he was a celebrity in his own right outside of baseball.
I think that's such a good observation, the way that you did it. And before we go, is that where you talked about how like it's a different experience in the sense of like it's more of like an event that you go to and like you're having your mimosa and like you're hanging out with your friends, and it's not like how we open this podcast when you explain the first Eagles game, right? People aren't pissing from the upper deck and people aren't cursing at you for wearing another jersey, but the people that are there, they still love their teams.
Exactly. And so,
and I think the Kobe thing is
both.
I think the Kobe thing is such a perfect thing to talk about, how LA was in mourning for a month, you know what I mean? And how the city felt quiet. Like you said, I think that when people realize that, because I think you're right, like people always scoff at LA and say people don't care, but like they actually do.
They really do. It just looks different. And like I said, I have an appreciation for both. And, you know, I have my LA teams now, and, you know,
Which
I
are,
know
before we
Dodgers, sorry,
Okay.
Phillies, Dodgers. You know, I'll take Clippers over Lakers, Kings for sure. You know, Kings fans are also, they go super hard. And then what am I leaving out? I'm leaving out a whole sport. Oh yeah, well, Chargers because I have season tickets, but that's more of a financial decision and less about enjoying hard.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Are you still, so tell everybody obviously your socials, and then are you still doing your podcast?
I am, but it's just been so busy. It's kind of fallen to the side, but you can listen to all my episodes. Alex Tries Her Best on any streaming platform. Thank you. We have another one going up soon, and then follow me on social, you know, across TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Alex on the mic, ALEX on the MIC. And ladies, thank you so much. This was so fun.
This was so fun. Thank you so much.
Go Birds.
You know,
go Birds.
Pick up your night, and yes, go Bird and go Birds. And we hope to catch up with you soon.
You will.
Bye. Right. Enjoy that sunny weather.
Oh, it's been so cold. It's been 38 in the morning, but when it comes back, it'll be, it's fucking weird. I hate it, but I'm freezing my ass off, guys.
Global warming then. Well, then
I've been, you know, Justin Peasy, but like his parents got a house in Manhattan Beach for like 3 months. And I'm like, I want to come visit, but like COVID still sucks there. It's just like,
COVID, don't come yet. We're the epicenter of the world. Please don't come. Like,
we'll talk
get sick. It's not good.
Bye
guys. See you later.
All right.